Okay, good morning, everybody. I wish I was with you in Seoul. Unfortunately, I'm still in Singapore. And thank you to the IGE for inviting me to talk today. So I have a few slides, but really I just have three big questions that we are asking ourselves at S&P about what the post-pandemic world is going to look like. And these three questions are, first of all, will behavior change? Will the behavior of governments, will the behavior of consumers change as a result of COVID-19? And what does that mean for Asia Pacific's new labor markets? Secondly, are we going to be entering into a balance sheet recession? We think that the prospects of a balance sheet recession have increased, unfortunately, and that means a slower recovery and a permanent loss in output, which will vary across countries. And then finally, just some very short thoughts on deglobalization, because I think that's been covered very well by the esteemed speakers on the panel that came before me. So if we just go to the first slide, the next slide here. So what we're learning about this pandemic is that it doesn't go away quickly. And even for countries like China, like Australia, which have managed to contain the first wave, we've seen outbreaks emerge from time to time. And if you actually look at the stringency, how strict social distancing measures enforced by the government still are, we are far from business as usual. So we're past the worst in some sense, but we're nowhere near back to normal. And we're also starting to see that consumers have changed their behavior. So even when those social distancing measures are relaxed, consumers are less willing to go into public spaces. They prefer to stay at home a little bit more. They're avoiding public transport. What that's doing is it's reducing the demand for services, face-to-face activities that we often see in the services sector. And that, of course, is hitting jobs, because in Asia Pacific, close to 2/3 of all employment is in the service sector. About 25% of all jobs are in food services, accommodation, and retail. And you can see from this slide here that we've seen a very big fall off in employment across our region since COVID-19 emerged. The bigger the fall in employment typically is where the lockdowns have been most severe. But for now, it looks like this decline in employment is going to continue for some time yet. I should say we've seen a little bit of stabilization in Korea, which is good news. Hopefully we see more stabilization. Our own forecasts at the moment assume, though, that we're not going to see a big rebound in jobs, at least in the next few months. And that's because if you look on the next slide, history tells us that when unemployment rises, and that's shown by the light blue bar here, this is the period it takes for unemployment rates to go from the bottom to the top of a cycle. That typically happens very quickly. It's going to happen even quicker in this cycle. But the period it takes for unemployment to go back down again to where it was at the start of the cycle is typically much longer. So the point here is that jobs are easily lost and hard to regain. And this is going to be an interesting time for Asia Pacific's labor markets, including Korea, because we know that a lot of the jobs that have been lost have been part-time jobs, temporary jobs, and that's where much of the job growth has come from in recent years. How quickly will these new types of jobs come back? If they don't come back, I think consumers are going to remain quite worried about the outlook. They're going to continue to build up their savings, and that's going to hit consumption. So jobs markets are going to be very important to watch. The second big question I mentioned earlier is related to balance sheets. So if you look at the next slide, in our region, as we know, there have been two what we call balance sheet recessions over the last 30 years. The Asian financial crisis, which, as we all know, and you know more about this in Korea than most people, it started as a currency crisis and ended up as a balance sheet crisis. The global financial crisis also had balance sheet effects as well. What we know about those two recessions is that 3 years after they began, output was still below the pre-recession trend. In the Asian financial crisis, 12% below. In the global financial crisis, 3% below. And you can see that from this chart, which compares the recessions here. We've also compared our expectations for COVID-19. The key point here is that we're going to come out of this pandemic with balance sheets in much worse shape for governments, banks, firms, households. That could dampen spending, particularly investment. That could slow down capital accumulation. And that's what gets you to what we think will be a 3% permanent output loss. Nothing as bad as the Asian financial crisis, but still, we don't think we're going to get back to where we would have been if the pandemic had never happened at all. And then just finally, the third big question, which I won't really go into too much, which is globalization. I think I agree with the speakers that came before in terms of the overall messaging here. It seems to be simply that COVID is accelerating a trend that was already underway. Professor Stiglitz mentioned that earlier. I think that's exactly the right way to think about it. In terms of the US-China relationship, unfortunately for now, things don't seem to be getting too much better. Three fronts: trade, access to financial markets, and technology. The phase one deal has stabilized trade, but on the financial side and the technology side, things still seem to be getting worse. From our perspective, this is not really an issue for the short term. We don't expect to see an escalation in the next 6 to 9 months, but fully agree that this is a big issue in the long term. It doesn't appear to be an easy problem to solve, and I think it's going to be something the world is going to have to live with for a sustained period of time. So let me leave it there and hand it back to you, Insol.